Yeah. You're listening to Autodesk's Digital Builder Podcast, a show that inspires construction professionals to innovate and use technology to improve how they build our world. I'm Eric Thomas, and I've been working in construction for nearly a decade. And now I have the privilege to sit down with industry trailblazers to hear how they're solving construction's biggest challenges and redefining the future of the built environment. Welcome back to another episode of Autodesk Digital Builder Podcast. I am your host, Eric Thomas. Today we are coming to you live from Autodesk University. It is the first day of the expo, and I am joined today by Randi Lucas, a project manager from CNY Group, and Reana Maglis, a BIM VDC Manager from Hansen Yuncken. So today we're going to be talking about maturing DEIB programs and how companies and individuals can support them. And DEIB stands for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging. And so we're going to look really closely at stepping beyond why and focusing on how we can really build impactful programs like this. So without any further ado, how are you both doing today? It's the first day of the expo. I hope you're feeling fired up.
Yeah, I'm excited and thrilled. It's been a lot of fun so far. Loving AU.
Yeah, full of energy. There's so much to look at. You don't know where to look first.
Yeah.
I feel you there, and I just love how excited and fired up people get. And we get this really unique opportunity to converge all of these different industries in one spot. And, I'm excited to dig into our conversation today. You're both doing some really cool stuff here this week, so thank you so much for joining me. But let's jump straight into, defining kind of a baseline for our conversation today. And Randi, I'm going to give you this first question. Can you give me a little bit more of your thoughts about why DEIB programs are so important and specifically impactful for the construction industry?
Yeah, thanks for letting me open the conversation up. I think overall, we hear a lot about DEI and B, and some is good, some's bad. The big why is a lot of companies that have it are more profitable, they're more creative, but especially for construction, one of our biggest problems right now is the labor shortage. There's always a conversation. Like any PM listening to this right now is probably like having a conversation right now about a trade contractor who does not have enough manpower or women power to actually get the construction done. And what a great way to solve two problems than implementing a DEI and B program. I read an article the other day that said 1 in 4 construction workers are over the age of 55. And this year alone, we need to hire over 500,000 people to fill the labor supply that we need. So we're killing two birds with one stone. Let's get more people excited about the industry, and also let's stop having those conversations about getting more manpower. Let's just solve the problem in a creative way.
Well, and it's such a foolish thing when you look at this. Why on earth would you neglect half of our population essentially for the challenges in labor, as you astutely just pointed out? If we are not inclusive enough in creating an environment that allows everybody to want to work here, if we're already struggling to fill those seats, especially if the amount of people that are going to be retiring in the next 5 years, we're in trouble. The construction industry is going to struggle. We're already in a tough spot, and it's just going to get worse. And so the value of the programs are tremendous. And, Reana, I'd love to hear your perspective here. Randi knocked it out of the park with her starting point, but I'd like to hear your thoughts too.
Yeah, no, as an industry, I think we value so much safety in design, value engineering, innovation in design, and all those problem-solving activities come from diversity in a range of different things, whether that's gender or age or your different stakeholder groups. So having that diversity will foster that creative thinking, really looking at different perspectives. So that's where you'll get some real value out of your project outcomes with diversity. And
I think we're just time and time again just proving this business case. Aside from the general humanity of this conversation and the importance of just being inclusive for the sake of being inclusive, if you've got somebody who's dragging their heels, all the things that you've both just shared, it's look at the numbers. Businesses do better when we have diverse teams, and full stop. I personally don't feel like we have to go deeper than that, but I guess I'm biased in the perspective.
That's right. Yeah.
But it seems silly that we have to dig in this deeply. But, I'm thankful that you're both here to help uplift this conversation and add the important perspective for others who are maybe not thinking about it in the framing that we're going to bring out together. So with that all said, I'd really like to take a closer look at the programs that each of you are involved in at your organizations. And so, Reana, I'd like to hear first, could you tell me a bit about Hansen Yuncken's Women in Construction program?
Yeah, sure. So HiWIC is the acronym for that there, and that is a national peer group that we established within the business. It did start in the state of New South Wales, where it really just emerged into a national initiative, and the intentions there are to, I guess, bring like-minded women together and give them a sense of belonging together. It's to connect, foster open discussions with each other, and it's evolved where we've now got Connect and Construct sessions, where we bring in external stakeholders, we do site visits, and it's really just fostered this kind of energy where it's evolved into both men and women, and as a knowledge and education piece for all of us.
I appreciate that baseline too, and it's cool that it's not just women in the sense of, narrowing that field, but I think men also have a seat at this table to bring their voice, to continue saying, bring everybody along. It's
That's
not
right, yeah.
just...
And we've got men in the committee member as well, and yeah.
I love it. It sounds like you're doing some really cool stuff. I'm looking forward to hearing a bit more about it. So, Randy, how about you? Can you tell us a bit more about what your team is doing at CNY Group, and what's been successful and how that program's evolved, especially with the AU class that you're teaching this year?
Yeah, I'm excited. This year is my first year at AU, and I'm also teaching class. It's called Don't Stop Believing, The Journey of DEI in Construction. Play on words, a little fun for DE&I. So that panel is going to take this conversation a little bit further with industry leaders to talk about their programs, how it's evolving. But for CNY as a company, they're great. They're really focused on ESG efforts overall. I think one thing they are big about is having everyone have a voice. So you're including the inclusion part of it. So whether it's like our ENG program was run by an APM who recently were promoted to a PM, but they allowed somebody who's maybe not that senior level executive to run a committee that's for the people and make them feel included. Like, I'm here and you value my opinion, but we also do more, like for our trade contractors, like we take it a little bit further besides internally. We externally have programs where we partner with diverse trade companies to make sure they're also building the exciting items in New York City. So it's more than just making our people feel included. It's about making the industry as a whole feel included.
I really like that point, because it's a broader conversation, and it's not just one company that's going to achieve this, or one person. Everybody does play a role, but I think just that value of finding opportunities and finding ways to bring folks to the table and, spread the love, I guess. It sounds like you're doing some really cool stuff. I appreciate that perspective. I think a lot of us out there have seen that, a lot of these leading companies in the construction industry are starting to put more of an emphasis on DEI and B programs in recent years. And so, Reana, I'd be curious, how do you think things are looking today at a broader state? I know we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but, how are things looking more broadly, and, what kind of progress have we made?
So we've definitely started to break away from those stigmas where, it's very male oriented, and, you've got some rough working conditions, and we're very, very well past that now in this day and age. And that message needs to be communicated, particularly for emerging and future generations. So alongside what I do at Hansen Yuncken, I'm also a tutor at the University of Technology, Sydney, where I essentially support students in digital design and construction subjects. And, as what you instill into your knowledge and your learning with the students is instilling your own experiences. And in doing that, you kind of foster this open, honest communication, and it's seen as a very warm gesture to the students in your lecture. And what that facilitates after that is some discussions or questions that they might have at the end of a lecture or a session, where they kind of share their own experiences and ask for questions as well. So just fostering that creativity with them.
I really like that. It's a very opportunity. It's an opportunistic moment too to get younger folks starting to understand that narrative, because construction has struggled with a perception problem for a very long time. And of course, I think many of us have seen that McKinsey graphic that says construction hasn't been innovative or productive in the history of time ever. And I hate that
Yeah.
chart whenever I see it now, because I don't think it reflects accurately what's actually happening now. We have this spike in innovation. We have this spike in interesting technology and innovation, and more broadly. And there are reasons to get excited about joining our industry. And I think when we have more folks like yourselves who are sitting down and bringing that message forward and pairing that with just how innovative and technology focused our industry is, it's going to be easier to get people to join this industry and fill all those seats that are currently open and are going to continue opening.
I agree, because I feel like the younger generations are digital natives. So they're more into technology. And we do, as a construction industry, has like people think we're just a bunch of people playing in the dirt with machines, but there's more to construction than just that. And I love that she's involved with all of that and getting them when they're young. That's where you need to get people interested in the industry.
Oh,
Yeah,
for sure.
most certainly can vouch for that, because over the years of my tutoring, I've really seen that progression happen where naturally, in more recent years, they will be able to navigate a BIM model more fluidly and naturally than it had been 5 years ago. So that technology piece almost becomes their second nature in this generation.
And I think the really cool thing that I hear about sometimes is the marrying of the older generations who have been in the industry for a long time with some of those younger folks, because you have these tech savvy people and they can bring that knowledge to the table. And then on the other side of the fence, you've got that person who has so much institutional knowledge who might retire in the next 5 years, and we need to catch that. We need to transfer that knowledge to our younger folks.
And I love just when the students are just so keen, where they just, they see a BIM model for the first time. You've got first year students and they're like, wow, like I'd love to bring in this into my business. And they'd ask questions like, how can I do it? And, you kind of just give them advice how you can certainly develop this kind of changing culture within the business, and kind of just to show these like for your foremen and your site managers and the guys that are really accustomed to being on site, showing them the value of technology and what it can bring to them in the field.
And I think the word that you use there that resonates the most with me is just culture. Like this is an organization-wide initiative, and it's something that leadership really needs to set that baseline from the beginning. And when they build on that and they showcase not just what or how you should be doing something, but I think the why is really important to communicate, because when people understand why you're making these choices, whether it's tied to the diversity initiatives or it's tied to technology choices or process change, when you bring people along for the ride in a more equitable way, we're in a much better position to convince somebody to say, okay, this is a good idea, versus more prescriptively telling somebody this is how it is. And of course, a company isn't always going to be a fully democratic process, and that's not something that I'm trying to advocate for. But when you are more communicative and when you bring that culture narrative together in a more meaningful way, it does make a big difference. You only get one chance to make a first impression, and you got to build on that. So I appreciate that perspective. But Randi, I'd like to look at the other hand of this narrative as well. So step back for a moment. What are some of the more concerning gaps that we're still seeing in the DEIB narratives, and things that are slowly hindering or preventing the creation of programs like this?
Yeah, so I think the big one is changing people's mindsets. I think it's very hard to change. You're used to doing things a certain way. And it's great if the leadership in the C-suite is all about it. But if you have those managers that are really responsible for the people and getting them to the next level and making them feel included, if they're not changing and not understanding, that can hinder your program. And then I also talked about women like in trades. I think a big thing is like now there's maybe 3% of women in the trades, but as more get involved, we need to think about their needs, like the equitable part of DEI, like mothers, like they all probably want to have kids. So instead of having a bunch of porta potties, what about nursing rooms for mothers to be, or paid maternity leave? Because hourly employees is already probably hard, but to take off leave to take care of a baby can be more expansive. And also maybe just in general, like not always focusing on the D and not the E and the I, which are probably the more important parts, believe it or not. Like it's very easy to find diverse candidates, but making sure they're staying, they feel included, that they feel like they have the same playing field as everyone else, that's the harder part. So losing the focus on that can hinder your company's progress. Like I remember there was a lady I worked with a while ago. She was African American, and one day she looks at me because there was another lady. She was a white lady in her office, and she's like, "Do you hear that?" And I was like, "What?" And she's like, "She's yelling and screaming." And I was like, oh, I didn't think twice about it. But she's like, "I can never do that because I would be labeled something," and it's like she didn't feel included. Like there's things like that. Hearing those stories, and it's like, "Oh, you're right. You'll be labeled." She's like, "Yeah, I have to watch the way I look. I have to act a certain way because it's a little bit of our unconscious bias there." But just overall, like, just make sure people are included and change the mindset will make your program more successful.
Yeah, I think you touched on so many things that I'm like trying to catalog them in my brain.
Did I ramble?
No, not at all. It's there's so many important nuances of it, and I appreciated you starting with the motherhood thing. Let's be real. I am not going to be a mother anytime soon, and I appreciate folks like yourselves sharing that perspective and having that important conversation, because it would be very easy for an old salt super who's been on site for 25 or 30 years to not think about anything that you've shared, and they may not even be doing this in a perspective of deliberately not being inclusive, but nobody's had that conversation. Nobody's had the level setting conversation of, if you get pregnant, let me know, and this is how we might change your responsibilities. This is more equitable for you as you get closer to having a child, And if you aren't told that perspective and you haven't lived through it, it's hard to know it. So it doesn't always come from a bad place, but the ignorance, that's not the right word necessarily. The lack of focus on this is challenging, and it's really important to make sure that we build our systems in a way to offer that opportunity, because I couldn't imagine working at a general contractor or a specialty contractor and being a woman and getting pregnant and having nobody ever tell me about what they're going to do to help me navigate that process.
Exactly.
And then you go to your foreman or your super and you go, "Hey, so a thing happened, and what's the reaction going to be?" And if you haven't built that culture, it might not be a great reaction, even if it's just a look on somebody's face.
Exactly. It's a changing industry. It wasn't a problem 50 years ago, but we just got to make it great for women in construction.
And it calls as a great initiative as well to really bring more females into the industry.
I'm graciously thankful for folks like yourselves who have shared these, perspectives. And I've had female friends who mostly, unfortunately, have left the industry, and I've worked with them at, Autodesk and other technology companies, and they've shared stories of, things they've dealt with, 10 years ago being on site. And it breaks my heart. And it's things that I wouldn't have had any visibility on because I didn't deal with that situation. That situation never unfolded for me personally, but it's so important to ensure that we're hearing that and making those adjustments. And, even if we just go into business mode again and think about our labor shortages, we got to fix these gaps very intentionally. And those changes are going to be some of those things that we can control that will hopefully bring more folks into our projects so we can, meet all these fast track schedules and all this other silly stuff that we deal with every day. It's not an easy conversation sometimes, but it's an incredibly important one. So I appreciate you highlighting that. Reana, I'm really interested to hear more about your technology background. I know you're very passionate there. And can you tell me a bit more about how we can marry our technology strategies with our efforts to build stronger and more diverse teams?
Yeah, so diversity can come from a whole different range of groups, and technology can act as a forum where you can connect people geographically. But when you're working on project teams, you're working with a variety of different stakeholders who also may be working across different states, different nations, and each hold their own set of skill sets when it comes to technology, where one may be more accustomed to interpreting plans, for example, and another more accustomed to using a BIM model. So something like leveraging the Autodesk Construction Cloud allows us to have those different tools in place that we're have those different tools that will cater for that diversity of skill sets.
I appreciate that focus so much, and it's one of those silver linings that come from recent years in, I think, construction teams historically, in my experience as well. I had a number of managers when I still worked at GCs who equated productivity with butts and seats. That was the factor. It's like, are you there doing the thing? And a remote work opportunity was just outrageous. They didn't even consider it. And we were forced to shift that paradigm and change that perspective very heavily. And we've learned, I think, in recent years that people can be, wherever. We're still building things. And so most folks who serve traditional roles in a construction company still need to be on site sometimes, obviously. So finding opportunities for them to have that flex, that might bring more folks into the company because they go, okay, I can work at home on Friday. I can handle, all of my modeling or my takeoffs or whatever the thing is that you're trying to do that doesn't make you need to be in the office or out on site. And you have that more equitable approach because people get to, choose where they work and how they work. I'm very thankful for that at Autodesk because I'm a remote employee and I get to dictate my schedule very heavily. Granted, that's slightly different than a construction company because I'm not building a physical thing, but it's still something that we need to be considering more in construction to bring more folks in.
Yeah, I'm sorry to
yeah,
interrupt.
go no.
But I mean, traditionally you kind of see like you're used to seeing draftspersons in the office, and they're the ones that are really tech savvy and are doing the modeling and the drafting. But technology has really opened up to facilitate a number of different roles across the industry. So we're looking at project engineers, estimators, and particularly more our site teams where reality capture has become such a big piece. And we've been able to connect those workflows together through the use of cloud services and technology that we hadn't previously been able to do if we didn't have access to mobile devices for our field teams or very powerful laptops that we can use for our design team and consultants.
Yeah, it's shifted so much.
It's like VR. I love it now. Like before, it was like a BIM model in the office. And now you got like Autodesk Construction Cloud where you can physically take the model to the site and tell your architect and engineers, here's the problem. Like, here's and you can like figure it out in real time and makes it quicker, makes it easier. And you can target, like we talk about targeting younger people that are like, I want to be something digitally. And they're like, oh, look at this opportunity you have now with the technology that's been developed.
And you get to go build this cool thing too. So you get all these cool technology to use, and it's just very flexible. And I'm seeing more and more data strategy and data scientist roles too. And those positions don't necessarily ever have to be on site. And so you can think of very different geographical barriers kind of being broken down. And that again is more inclusive, and it also gives an opportunity for folks who might not live near where a project is to still play a very meaningful role. And so I feel like our ecosystem is shifting right now. And not everybody is bought in, and we still need people on site at times. And that obviously makes sense for building something. But I'm thankful for the flexible approach that is starting to be offered more frequently than we had seen it historically. So I appreciate the perspective there. And Randy, I've got another question for you. And I think this might back to your class. So anybody listening who thinks that, this narrative is good, you should check out that class because she'll go even deeper than she has the opportunity to here. But for those leaders out there who don't have that formal or robust DEIB program in place at the company, where do they start? Where is ground zero if you're trying to build this program?
The simplest thing is like when you're looking for new employees, maybe do something that you won't normally do. Like I think we all post on the major social site, or like there's a few of them actually. I'm not going to name them, but maybe you go to an association that focus on a different demographic that you wouldn't normally do. go to an HBCU. Like they have career fairs and like get individuals there excited about construction and entering into it. So it's starting small, right? And then also just talking to your peers like, you know what, maybe I'm a small company and I don't need a big program, but what can I do something now to help me? So like ask for help. I think construction industry, we have that rough and tough, like we never like to ask for help for anything, but just ask like, what can I do? What's something small I can do? It's actually like that conversation at my company where they let everyone have a voice. Like it's small, but I feel included. I feel like I have an equal opportunity as everyone else in the company. So it's not like this big, rough, like 100-page essay about DE&I. And I think that's what people miss. They think it's something crazy. And it's like, no, it's pretty simple, actually, at the end of the day. So yeah, it's not rocket science, but we can make it that way.
I think it really does boil down to intent. Like
Yes.
the intention and the follow through there is really what starts to build it, because if you intend to do this, as you alluded to, you're not going to build your 800-page manual for all this stuff on day one. That's an unrealistic expectation. Even if you have a long-term vision that's far more robust, you have to find those small spots to start. You start building it,
Yeah.
and then you build on that. It's not just, today we have no strategy tied to this. Tomorrow everybody understands that as an educated, here's your manual. Like that's unreasonable, and you set yourself up for failure at that point because it doesn't feel attainable or sustainable. So I appreciate that perspective.
Nobody ever reads the manual.
No, not at
Ever.
all. And
Ever.
my degree is in scientific and technical communication, and I don't read the manual.
Yeah.
So like I understand. All right, so let's take a closer look at that fictional company. And Randy, I'd be curious what your thoughts are here. They've got their baseline. They've built that foundation for their organization now. How do they scale? How do they grow it into this aspirational program that we've been kind of alluding to at the bigger picture?
Yeah. So now you have you've gone, let's say you got your diverse group of people into the room. Now you have more voices, more people with experience, more people who in my past life, this works. So you have more people to get ideas from and to build on and to make it better. I think what a lot of people do, it reminds me of this commercial in the early 2000s. I'm going to show my age a little bit, but it was
I'm right there with you, don't worry.
Or maybe you remember this one. It was like rotisserie chicken thing, and they used to be like, set it and forget
I
it.
remember that.
I think a lot of people do that with their DE&I programs.
They go, we did it, and then we go away.
Yeah. We actually got to that manual. We wrote it. We're good. No, you got to keep involving. You got to keep listening to your teams. Maybe you solved 10 problems, but there's 10 more problems you didn't know about. So to keep scaling, it's to listen, get input, ask for help again, and you can build it to be something great.
I appreciate that. And just having all those diverse voices, it changes the narrative so much, because you can only go so far with your own perspective and your own experience. And it's incredibly valuable to bring all of these different opinions into the table. And I can only do so much as a person who's willing to listen and hear and hopefully pass on some of the things that you might share.
Yeah.
But that's still different from you sitting at that table and sharing that opinion directly, because somebody can ask a follow-on question. You can add additional context.
Exactly.
And, I'm learning from both of you right now, and I'm very grateful for that. But the value is still you driving that narrative, because you're going to understand it better than I am, and you have a different perspective. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and
Reana,
you don't know what you don't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's always so startling when you get one of those pointed out to you so clearly, where you go, ooh, that was a blind spot, and I feel very uncomfortable right now. But I think there's a humility as you get older, as you start to learn to be okay in that uncomfortable moment, where there's a graciousness where you step back and go, thank you for telling me. I've been doing this thing for years, and I didn't realize that wasn't inclusive, or I was missing an opinion or a perspective that I just didn't have the good fortune to have. And then you build on that, and it kind of goes from there. So, there's so much to be said about, just being intentional. I joke on this show all the time. I should have a swear jar in front of me all the time, because I say intentional and intentionality all the time. But it maps back to so many different programs, and just how you can do good business and also just be a good person. So I appreciate that. And I want to go a little bit deeper here, and thinking about that individual level as well. And Randy, I think this might map back to your class to some degree, and I'd also be interested in Reana's perspective. But okay, so we've been thinking company level for the most part here. What actions can that individual take that will also make an impact? Like somebody's just one person, they're at a business that may or may not have a robust program in place for, DEIB initiatives. What can that person do?
Yeah, we're definitely touching on that tomorrow. But one big thing is mentorship. There's a lot of leaders in high places, and if you see somebody that's new or into the industry and you know they have the potential, mentor them. Tell them how to get to the top. Don't let them sit to their own device, because they might not have the same background or education as you and know how to get to the top. And allyship, speak up for people. Don't just be okay when you know something's not right. Like you as a person have a voice and use it for good. Like if you see something, say something. Hear that all the time in a New York subway. But yeah, it speaks for anything. Like speak up for people. Use your voice, especially if you're somebody of a higher power.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a privilege in that where you might have a bigger voice in a moment. And call out the BS. Like if you see somebody treating somebody badly, or if a program isn't structured right, or if you're, if something doesn't feel right, especially if you are in that position where somebody might listen or you might have more voice, regardless of why, I think it's on all of us to take that moment and step back and say, okay, this isn't right, or this isn't okay. And you can think about how you do that in the moment. Sometimes screaming and yelling in the situation might not be the right way to call out bad behavior. You bring in the management, you do everything else, you pull somebody aside. But I think it's the responsibility is on all of us, and it's situational as far as where we apply it. But I appreciate that. I think we all have to, call bad behavior out on the nose when we have the opportunity to do so.
Agreed.
Do you have anything else to add? Again, she knocks it out of the park on that answer.
Yeah, no, definitely. You don't want to underestimate how small actions can be so impactful in the industry. So getting involved in, mentoring, for example, STEM programs, women in construction initiatives, other external organizations that support DIB programs, all those little things are very impactful, and just the female presence, bringing that warmth, that openness, those open conversations, is a real affirmation for, I guess, young girls in the industry, or even looking for a higher education in the construction, architectural, engineering space.
And I think we also have to do a better job of promoting these folks into leadership positions as well. There is a huge gap. You were talking about the diversity narrative being easy as far as we're just going to put people in here and we've got numbers. But put those people in charge when they've earned the right to be in charge.
And understand that some people don't manage the same way that you manage. Yep. And that's okay. It's more like, are they effective? Are they making me money? That's what we care about. And looking at those demographics versus they speak a certain way, or they're not, you got a lot of bit of that to do.
And I've been appreciative. Almost all of my most recent managers have been women. And I'm not saying this just because my boss is sitting down the down the aisle down there. Hi, Grace. But it's been really refreshing for me, because there's been just a different level of emotional intelligence at sometimes that have been brought to the table from a lot of the women that I've had the privilege of working under. Ali Scott also works for Autodesk. Kristen Silva. They're incredible leaders who have a different perspective from some of the opportunities that I've had in the past as far as leadership. And I just remember one of the first times I ever sat in a room with a leader, and Ali might be out here somewhere too. Ali, if you're around, hi. Very clearly calling on the nose, like, this is a safe space to bring your opinions and your perspectives. I want to understand how you're feeling. And I never had a manager say anything like that to me before. And I've really internalized that as I've grown in my career as far as how I work with other people. And I think that there's so much value when you have that chance to step back and say, okay, your voice is important. And the small point that you pointed out a moment ago, where just saying that and making it and saying it in a way that resonates does a lot for the people that are under you on your team, because you've opened that door in a way where they're going to be comfortable coming and talking to you. And they might not have known that you were okay with it because you never told them. And historically, it might not be, it might not have been so open door with managers in the past. And so I just, building on that narrative of just the importance of bringing more voices into the conversation, I think is absolutely paramount. But I've got two more questions for both of you, and they're recurring questions, a little bit more lighthearted than the deep conversation we've been having here, even though I'm very appreciative of it because it's such an important one to have. But Reana, I'm going to kick this one to you first. Could you tell me a little bit more about your favorite industry trends or what you're seeing in the market, or a few of your predictions for the next 5 to 10 years with regards to construction technology? I know you're passionate about the technology.
Yes,
piece, so
yes.
I'm eager to hear your answer.
So coming from a technology perspective, that will continue evolving in a very, very rapid pace, as we have seen. And we'll start to leverage on a lot of cloud-based services where we'll be able to connect more external teams together and teams within your own organization as well. Better connecting diversity across different roles and responsibilities across the business will start to be a bit of a trend as well. And this idea of connected construction that we keep hearing as a new buzzword.
I think we're finally at the point where it's not a buzzword anymore. Like this is construction. And if you're not building your workflows in the way that you're alluding to, this was a nice to have for a very long time. It's a requirement to remain competitive, in my opinion, and also be interesting and lucrative as a contractor for owners or for people to come work for you, because it's so important to connect everything. And I think it's reality now. And it hadn't been for a long time. We were talking about it, but as we align on these platforms, we're in such a better position. So Randy, how about you? What are your current favorite trends, and what do you think is coming in the next few years?
Loving the technology part of it all. I started construction before Autodesk Build type situation where I had to
Same.
hand write my submittal comments on all the submittals and then paper send it all out. So I'm glad that construction is embracing it. I felt like we got spreadsheets probably 10 years after everyone else, but we were so hard to let them go. But I love it. I love I went to a general session this morning about it and Forma. It's this is exciting. We're finally moving forward. We're not the antiquated industry anymore. And that they also talked about modular construction, which I'm so grateful for because as a builder in the field, you have quality control, getting done quickly. And now we're taking that more into a factory setting where you can check that more easily and cut down on cost and time to build, because everyone now wants it done quicker, faster, cheaper. And now we have modular hotels and hospitals. I'm just thinking, I'm just so excited about that. I think that's the big wave. I think we're going to figure it out. I think there's some glitches here and there. And we won't be so stressed with getting the number down at bid time because we have all this technology and everything in our hands.
When you get to control it, that offsite construction with prefab and modular approaches, you pull people offsite, you've got such a more robust ability to control it. But I think all the connected cloud stuff that we were talking about a minute ago, that's the requirement now to do that successfully, because you can't have something that's quite out of alignment. And if your field team isn't connected with the fabrication shop or the modular team, there's a little bit of tension there, and there's some hesitation because I feel folks have been burned in the past because it wasn't connected in the way that we have the privilege of being today. So we're in a good spot. I appreciate it. Both those answers are great. So I got one more for you. Reana, could you lead this off? What is one tool that you will use on any project, no matter what project you're working on?
Without doubt, you need a common data environment, a digital common data environment that is cloud hosted, because the industry is so heavy on data usage, and being able to move information quickly from your pre-con phase to design and delivery and handover, you need a tool that's really going to facilitate that communication of information and bringing all those parties together as well. So that would be undoubtedly the tool.
So you don't like SharePoint servers and just dumping stuff on there and saying, we're cloud connected?
Not ideal.
All right, I'm going to have to see if you want to join our marketing team in the future. You're ready to
sold me on something.
Yeah, we're good.
Can you
Randy,
tell me more?
How about you? What's one tool you use that every
Mine is more of a dumbed down version. Believe it or not, BIM. We're building a skyscraper, getting ready to build the skyscraper. And the architect was like, we didn't design it in Revit. And I literally had a heart attack. I had that same look on my face and was like, and you never realize it because I thought everyone was doing it now. I was like, we're not building 260-story towers. I don't even know how to do it. Like, I was like, we're not. And I would like go to meetings like, we got to do it in BIM. Hire somebody. I don't care. We're not building this building without BIM. And everyone's like, why is she in such a panic? And I was like, guys, like anything can go wrong. Like, but yeah, like simple BIM. Like everything I build will always be BIM related.
Well, I love that answer, and I feel like we finally hit that vision of BIM that was promised 10, 15 years ago when it started coming out, because everybody's like, this is going to be so connected, and we weren't quite there yet. And I feel like today now, the rich data that's built into all of the BIM models that we have, it's just such a different conversation. So I empathize. I couldn't admit skyscraper, right? And you go, all right, here's your 2D plans, and you just leave it at that. Like, no. Like this doesn't make any sense. Well, I love both of your answers here, and I'm so thankful that both of you had the time to join me today on Digital Builder. So I hope you have a great rest of your conference. And for everybody out there listening, of course, I am Eric Thomas, the host of Digital Builder. If you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter or X or whatever it is at builder_digital or LinkedIn. I'm the only Eric Thomas that works for Autodesk to my knowledge. And if you're interested in watching more episodes, of course, we are video first. So find the Autodesk Construction Cloud YouTube page, and we will jump into it from there. But without further ado, goodbye.